I think each family has to figure out what's best for them. What method of education works best for them, what classroom setting works best for them. One of my friends emailed me a while back who has a daughter who is on the spectrum and who's been recently diagnosed, and she knows that we have homeschooled, and she knows that we've had kids who've gone to parochial school, and she knows that we have kids in public school now. She asked me if I would be willing to speak about our schooling experiences and why we made the decisions that we've made, and basically just talk about how each of those experiences has worked out for us and how we've ended up where we ended up. I'm actually going to start at the beginning today. This is going to be a part one, and I'm going to talk about homeschooling. And I desperately wanted to homeschool our kids. Like, I was extremely set on the idea. I had a shelf full of books. I had read so many books about homeschooling. I basically bought every single book that I saw. I mean, we're talking about while I was pregnant with Sadie, I was reading every single book on homeschooling that you could find. I was pretty much in love with the classical education method. The Well-Trained Mind was pretty much my favorite of all the books. And when Sadie turned 5, I basically went down the reading list for the Well-Trained Mind and bought every single book that she even mentioned or suggested in her reading list, which is a lot of books. I mean, all of the books for the history section, all of the supplemental books, everything. At that point, Maggie had been diagnosed, and I was really still hoping that I was going to be able to homeschool Maggie, and I was telling all our social workers that I planned on homeschooling her while we were doing, she was going to obviously be an ABA, and she was still doing ABA in home at that point, and I was going to homeschool her. And you guys, they were incredibly supportive. Everyone, her therapists were supportive, her social workers were supportive, everyone was incredibly supportive of my wish to homeschool her. No one ever discouraged me, ever, from that wish. And time progressed. I would say that the first thing for me that was really, really hard was that with all of the appointments that we had, between all the appointments with Maggie, and then Patrick had like allergist appointments, and then James was born, and James had low tone and hyperflexibility, and he very quickly had like a neurologist, and he had orthopedic stuff going on, and he had orthotics, and he had PT, and Patrick had speech, and Sadie had OT twice a week, and Sadie had speech, and Maggie had OT, speech, ABA, and we had like well over 300 therapy appointments a year, and well over 80 doctor's appointments a year, and doing anything social was basically pretty impossible. Maybe for some super extroverted person who is much more motivated than me to get to things that were social, it would not have been impossible. But I quickly began to see my limitations in homeschooling. And I also quickly began to realize that I had a super ultra extroverted daughter, and that the ballet classes, and we did have her in a homeschool art class and a homeschool acting class. She was in homeschool art, homeschool acting, ballet. Those, like, you know, an hour a week classes were not cutting it for her. That she craved a whole lot more than she was getting in that hour a week, and that this picture that I had in my head of what was going to be perfect for our family wasn't. The next dream that I had for her was parochial school, because we had this parish that we absolutely loved and that we thought would be perfect for her to go to. We'd been there for 4 years, and it seemed kind of like a dream come true. And so that was what we thought would be a really, really good fit. And so for us, that was the end of our homeschooling journey. And that was also, for me, kind of the beginning of shifting away my thinking. So it was really hard for me to give up the dream of homeschooling, because I had been so set in it in my head. So I talked about the blog previously, and a lot of my blogging friends were homeschooling, and almost everybody that I read and knew in that world, everybody homeschooled their kids pretty much, or not everybody, but probably 90% of my friends online homeschooled. And so the fact that I was suddenly putting my kids in school, I mean, I know, it seems silly. It probably sounds really, really silly. You're like, this is just a blog. But I was really, really isolated in terms of basically my whole entire life is therapy appointments all day, every day. And I didn't have a whole lot of our families are on separate coasts. I don't really know anybody in real life except our kids' therapists and doctors. Paul's at law school. He leaves early in the morning. He gets home in the middle of the night. The only people that I'm really seeing in real life are the kids and occasionally therapists. And so really the only social support that I have is pretty much online, and all of my friends homeschool. And so stepping back from that was hard. And I personally was totally devoted to it. I thought this was like what we were going to do and it was going to be perfect for us. And I totally bought into all of the statistics that kids who homeschool do so much better, and it was going to be perfect for us and it was going to be the best and everything that all the books said. And for us, it was not the best. Sadie thrives when she's with other kids and when she's able to be competitive, and Maggie thrives when she is in a structured classroom environment where she's at a desk and where she has, well, obviously, professionals that are trained to meet the sort of needs that she has. And so for us, the dream that I had in the beginning definitely was not the best. Finally, I was able to let go of that and realize that this thing that was in my head was never what was the best and never was going to be what was the best. And it probably would have been a lot better if I'd given that up 3 years earlier, because we homeschooled for 3 years before I finally let go of that. And I'm not saying that homeschooling isn't right, because for some parents it obviously is. I know there are autism bloggers out there who do awesome jobs homeschooling. I'm talking specifically about like my kids and me. It wasn't awesome for us. This whole entire series, this is super case by case. I mean, I think each family has to figure out what's best for them. So that's what's important, that each family figures out what method of education works best for them, what classroom setting works best for them. And for some people that is going to be private school, for some people that's going to be homeschool, and for some people that's going to be public school. And there's reasons that that's going to work. That is how we went from homeschooling to private school, and that is the first step of our educational journey. I'll talk more about it in part 2 and how we went from private school to public school. That's it for tonight, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye.